The coffee maker had been making that grinding noise for 3 weeks now, like metal teeth chewing glass. At midnight on a Tuesday, standing in my boxer shorts and an old Cubs t-shirt, I finally decided to fix the damn thing. The kitchen was dark except for the blue glow from Claire's tablet, abandoned on the counter next to a stack of unopened mail and her reading glasses. I'm Mercer Cole, 44 years old, owner of a small IT repair shop that barely keeps us afloat. I fix things for a living: computers, phones, coffee makers, everything except my marriage, apparently. Claire always said I was great with machines. Turns out, I can fix anything except the one thing that matters most. The tablet screen was still lit, showing her messages. I wasn't snooping, not really. The screen was just there, glowing like a beacon in our dark kitchen. A voice note sat unplayed at the top of the thread. Without thinking, I hit play. Claire's voice purred through the speakers, soft and intimate, in a way I hadn't heard in months. "He's sweet, but you're the one I want." I froze, my fingers still hovering over the tablet. The coffee maker continued working, but I couldn't hear it anymore. All I could hear was my wife's voice, saying those words to someone who wasn't me. The recipient was listed as J. Ashford. The name hit me like a punch to the gut. James Ashford, her former coworker from the marketing firm where she used to work before landing her current position as marketing director at Brennan and Associates. Tall, slick, always wore expensive suits, and drove a Tesla. I'd met him at a few office parties back in the day. He had the kind of smile that made you want to check your wallet afterward. My hands shook as I scrolled up through the message thread. What I found made my stomach drop through the floor. Months of messages, escalating from casual workplace banter to increasingly intimate exchanges. The timestamps told a story I'd been too blind to see. Every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 4 months, Claire had been working late on the Morrison campaign. Every Tuesday and Thursday, like clockwork, she'd text me around 6 p.m. "Going to be another long night. Don't wait up." And every Tuesday and Thursday, according to these messages, she'd been with James Ashford. "Can't wait to see you tonight," from 3 weeks ago. "Tuesday can't come fast enough," from last month. "Tell your husband you're working late again," from just last week. I screenshot every single message, my finger moving mechanically across the screen. Email after email went to my personal account, each one another nail in the coffin of my marriage. When I was done, I carefully deleted any trace of my access from her tablet, cleared the email notifications, and placed it exactly where I'd found it. The coffee maker finally gave up with a mechanical wheeze and went silent. In the sudden quiet, I could hear my heart pounding against my ribs and the distant sound of our neighbor's dog howling at something in the darkness. 20 minutes later, I heard Claire's car in the driveway. I was back in bed, eyes closed, pretending to sleep, when she slipped in beside me. She smelled like expensive cologne, not mine, and her hair was slightly mussed, despite the late hours she claimed to have spent hunched over spreadsheets and marketing reports. "Long night?" I mumbled, keeping my voice sleepy and innocent. "The Morrison campaign is killing me," she whispered back, settling into her pillow. "But we're finally making progress." I lay there in the dark, listening to her breathing even out as she fell asleep, and realized I'd never felt so cold in my own bed. The voice note echoed in my mind. "He's sweet, but you're the one I want." I never realized how cold a marriage bed could get with just one secret. The next morning, Claire was already gone when I woke up. A note on the kitchen counter said she had an early meeting and would probably be working late again. It was Wednesday, not one of her usual late nights with James, so I had time to think. I called Dr. Elena Larkin's office from my shop that afternoon, wedged between fixing a laptop with a fried motherboard and diagnosing why Mrs. Peterson's printer kept jamming. Dr. Larkin had been recommended by Claire's friend Monica as the best couples therapist in the suburbs when we'd hit a rough patch 2 years ago. We'd only gone twice before Claire declared us fixed. "I'd like to schedule a session for my wife and me," I told the receptionist. "It's somewhat urgent. Dr. Larkin has an opening Thursday at 6 p.m. Will that work?" Thursday. One of Claire's usual late nights. Perfect. That evening, I broke the news to Claire over dinner. Take-out Chinese food eaten in front of the TV, Our usual romantic setup. Couples therapy? Claire looked up from her lo mein, chopsticks frozen halfway to her mouth. Mercer, we're fine. Why would we need therapy? Are we fine? I asked, keeping my voice casual. When's the last time we really talked? I mean, really connected? She set down her chopsticks and studied my face. Claire had always been good at reading people. It's what made her excellent at marketing and, apparently, at lying to her husband. I've just been stressed with work, she said finally. The Morrison campaign has been consuming my life. But it'll be over soon, and then things can go back to normal. Normal, as if anything about our marriage had been normal for months. I already made the appointment, I said. Thursday at 6. I know you'll probably have to leave work a little early, but I think it's important. For just a moment, something flickered across her face. Panic? Calculation? Then, her marketing director's smile slid back into place. Of course, you're right. We should invest in our relationship. Thursday couldn't come fast enough. Dr. Larkin's office was exactly what you'd expect from a therapist who charged $200 an hour. Plush carpet, abstract art, a box of tissues strategically placed on every surface. The kind of place where people paid premium prices to have their feelings validated. Claire arrived 5 minutes late, slightly breathless, claiming traffic from downtown. She was wearing the black dress I'd bought her for her birthday last year, the one that hugged her curves in all the right places. Funny how she never seemed to wear it for me anymore. So, Dr. Larkin began, settling into her leather chair with a legal pad. What brings you both in today? Mercer feels like we need to reconnect, Claire said before I could speak. I think we're just going through a busy period, but I'm willing to work on things. And how do you feel about that, Mercer? I looked at my wife sitting there in her expensive dress, wedding ring catching the soft office lighting, and felt something cold settle in my chest. I think we need to be honest with each other, I said, about everything. For the next 20 minutes, we went through the usual therapy dance. Dr. Larkin asked about our communication patterns, our intimacy, our individual stress levels. Claire played her part perfectly, the devoted wife struggling to balance career and marriage. I've been working late a lot, she admitted with practiced vulnerability. The Morrison campaign has required so much overtime. Tuesday and Thursday nights especially, those are our big strategy sessions. And how does that make you feel, Mercer? Dr. Larkin asked. Lonely, I said truthfully, like I'm married to a stranger. That's when I pulled out my phone and forwarded the screenshots to Dr. Larkin's email address. All of them. Every single message between my wife and James Ashford, including the voice note I'd converted to an audio file. Dr. Larkin's phone buzzed. She glanced at it automatically. Then her expression changed as she read my email subject line. Context for today's session. Excuse me for just a moment, she said, opening the first attachment. I watched Claire's face as Dr. Larkin read. Confusion first, then dawning horror as she realized what was happening. Claire, Dr. Larkin said carefully, would you like to respond to these messages? What messages? But Claire's voice had gone thin and high. Dr. Larkin turned her phone screen toward us. Claire's own words stared back at her. Can't wait to feel your hands on me again. The silence in that office was deafening. Outside, I could hear traffic and the distant sound of a construction crew. Normal life continuing while my marriage imploded in real time. Those aren't... they're taken out of context, Claire stammered. James and I work together. Sometimes we vent about our relationships. It's not what it looks like. Venting, I repeated slowly. Is that what we're calling it now? Dr. Larkin clicked to the next message, then the next. Months of evidence, time-stamped and detailed. Claire's face went white, then red, then white again. This session is over, Claire said, standing abruptly. Mercer, how could you violate my privacy like this? Your privacy? I stood too, and for the first time in months, I felt completely calm. You mean your affair? It's not an affair. It's complicated. No, I said, it's actually pretty simple. You've been sleeping with James Ashford every Tuesday and Thursday for 4 months while telling me you're working late. Claire flinched at my language. In 15 years of marriage, I'd rarely raised my voice, never used profanity in front of her friends or family. But something had shifted inside me. Something fundamental and irreversible. Dr. Larkin, I said, turning to the therapist, who was watching our meltdown, with professional detachment. I assume this gives you enough context for future sessions, though I don't think we'll be needing them. I walked out, leaving Claire to explain herself to a therapist who'd just seen every dirty detail of her betrayal. In the parking lot, I sat in my truck for 10 minutes, hands shaking with adrenaline, before I made my next call. Mrs. Van Doren, this is Mercer. I'm sorry to call so late, but I thought you should know about Claire. Claire's mother, Margaret Van Doren, had never liked me. In her eyes, I was the blue-collar nobody who'd stolen her daughter away from a life of country clubs and charity galas. The fact that Claire had married beneath her station was a source of constant, barely concealed disappointment. But Margaret Van Doren valued reputation above everything else, and adultery was a stain that no amount of old money could wash clean. I'm driving over, she said after I'd forwarded her the same evidence I'd shown Dr. Larkin. Her voice was ice-cold fury. Don't let Claire leave the house. Claire came home an hour later, her face blotchy from crying. She found me in the kitchen, sitting at our small table with a cup of coffee and a stack of printed emails. How could you? She said, her voice raw. How could you humiliate me like that? I humiliated you? I looked up from the papers. Claire, you humiliated yourself. I just provided the documentation. She slumped into the chair across from me, suddenly looking older than her 41 years. It's not what you think. James and I, it's complicated. You keep saying that. What exactly is complicated about lying to your husband for 4 months? You don't understand the pressure I'm under at work. The expectations, the competition. James gets it. He understands what I'm going through. And I don't? When's the last time you asked about my day? Really asked, not just, how was work, while you're fixing some broken computer? The accusation hit harder than I expected because there was truth in it. We'd been living parallel lives for months, maybe years. But that didn't justify what she'd done. So this is my fault? No, that's not what I'm saying. Claire reached across the table, trying to take my hand. I pulled away. I'm saying we both let our marriage drift. What happened with James? It was a mistake. A series of mistakes. But it's over now. Is it? Yes. I'll end it tomorrow. We can work through this, Mercer. Couples survive affairs all the time. That's when Margaret Van Doren's Mercedes pulled into our driveway. Claire's face went pale. You called my mother? I thought she should know, especially considering she paid for our wedding. The front door opened without a knock. Margaret Van Doren had her own key, a fact that had always irritated me, but which Claire defended as family tradition. She swept into our kitchen like an avenging angel in a Chanel suit, her silver hair perfectly coiffed despite the late hour. Claire Elizabeth, she said, and her daughter flinched at the use of her full name. Explain yourself. Mother, please. This is between Mercer and me. Is it? Margaret pulled out her phone and began reading from the screenshots I'd sent. I need to feel you inside me. My husband suspects nothing. Can't wait to taste you again. Should I continue? Claire buried her face in her hands. Please stop. $30,000, Margaret said, her voice cutting through the kitchen like a blade. That's what your father and I spent on your wedding? $30,000 to celebrate what you've now revealed to be a sham. It wasn't a sham then. Things changed. Things changed? Margaret's laugh was bitter. You mean you changed? You became exactly what I raised you not to be. Common. The word hit Claire like a slap. In Margaret Van Doren's world, there was no greater insult than being called common. I want our money back, Margaret continued. Every penny. The wedding, the down payment on this house, the car loan I co-signed. All of it. Mother, you can't be serious. I've never been more serious in my life. You've embarrassed our family, violated your marriage vows, and made a fool of yourself over some middle management nobody. The Van Doren name means something in this community, and I won't have it dragged through the mud because you couldn't keep your legs closed. The crude language from her refined mother shocked Claire into silence. Margaret turned to me, her expression softening slightly. Mercer, you have my support in whatever legal action you choose to take. I'll testify on your behalf if necessary. After Margaret left, Claire and I sat in our kitchen in silence. The stack of printed messages lay between us, like a roadmap of betrayal. Outside, the neighbor's dog was howling again, a lonely sound that seemed to echo how I felt inside. What happens now? Claire asked finally. Now you call James and tell him it's over. Then you call your office and request a transfer to a different account. Then we figure out if there's anything left of our marriage worth saving. And if there isn't, I looked at my wife. Really looked at her for the first time in months. The woman I'd fallen in love with 15 years ago was still there, underneath the guilt and the designer clothes and the lies. But something fundamental had broken between us, something that might never heal. Then I guess we'll find out how much $30,000 means to your mother. The next morning, I opened my shop late after spending the night on our living room couch. My phone had been buzzing since dawn with messages from Claire's friends, Monica, Jessica, Sandra, the whole coffee clatch, who'd never quite accepted me into their circle of suburban privilege. The messages started sympathetic. So sorry to hear about your troubles. Here if you need to talk. Marriage is hard work. But by afternoon, the tone had shifted. Word traveled fast in our neighborhood, and apparently, Claire had been working the phones, spinning her own version of events. Maybe you should have paid more attention to your wife's needs. Monica, snooping through someone's private messages is a violation of trust. Jessica, Claire's been unhappy for months. We all saw the signs. Sandra, by evening, the gloves were completely off. You drove her to this with your neglect. Monica, a real man would have seen this coming. Jessica, Claire deserves better than a bitter husband who airs their dirty laundry. Sandra, I stared at my phone, watching 15 years of friendships evaporate in real time. These people had been in our lives since we'd moved to the neighborhood. We'd had barbecues together, celebrated birthdays, shared holidays. Now they were choosing sides, and I was losing. The final message came from Tom Bradley, my closest friend in the group. Tom and I had coached Little League together, spent countless Sunday afternoons watching football and complaining about our wives' spending habits. If anyone would understand my position, it would be Tom. Mercer, we need to talk. Can you meet me at Flanagan's tomorrow night, 8 p.m.? I knew that tone. It wasn't a friendly invitation. Flanagan's Pub was our group's regular hangout, a dimly lit sports bar with sticky floors and a jukebox that hadn't been updated since the Clinton administration. Tom was already there when I arrived, sitting in our usual booth with Monica's husband Jeff and Sandra's husband Dave. Three of my closest friends, all wearing expressions that told me this wasn't going to be a social call. Mercer, Tom said as I slid into the booth. Thanks for coming. Wouldn't miss it, I said, signaling the waitress for a beer. Though, I'm guessing this isn't about fantasy football. Jeff leaned forward, his face serious. We've been talking to our wives about what's been going on with you and Claire. I bet you have. Look, man, Dave said. We get that you're hurt. Nobody's saying cheating is okay. But the way you're handling this, it's not right. I took a long drink of my beer, studying their faces. These were men I'd known for over a decade. Guys I'd trusted with everything from borrowed tools to personal problems. Now they were sitting across from me like a tribunal. How exactly should I be handling it? I asked. Not by humiliating Claire in public, Tom said. Not by dragging her mother into it. Not by forwarding private messages to her therapist. Private messages? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Tom, she was sleeping with another man for months, while lying to my face every Tuesday and Thursday. Keep your voice down, Jeff hissed, glancing around the bar. People can hear you. Let them hear. I'm done pretending everything's fine. Dave shook his head. This isn't you, Mercer. You're a good guy. You don't air your dirty laundry in public. You work things out privately like an adult. Like an adult? I set my beer down harder than necessary. You want to know what's adult? Finding out your wife is cheating and doing something about it instead of pretending it didn't happen. But that's not what you did, Tom said. What you did was declare war. You went nuclear instead of trying to save your marriage. Save my marriage? I stared at him. Tom, she was sending voice messages to another man saying she wanted to sleep with him. What exactly was I supposed to save? The relationship you built together, the commitment you made, the life you shared. Jeff's voice was getting louder now. Instead, you chose revenge over reconciliation. And what about her choice? What about her commitment? Claire made a mistake, Dave said. A big mistake. But people make mistakes. That doesn't mean you burn everything to the ground. I looked around the table at these three men, these friends who'd been part of my life for so long, and realized I was seeing them clearly for the first time. They weren't concerned about my pain or my betrayal. They were concerned about appearances, about keeping their comfortable suburban bubble intact. You know what I think? I said, leaning back in the booth. I think you're all terrified. You're terrified that if I don't, just quietly forgive and forget, your own wives might start wondering what they could get away with. That's bullshit, Tom snapped. Is it? When's the last time any of you actually looked at your wife's phone, checked their messages, paid attention to where they really are when they say they're working late? The silence that followed was deafening. I could see the doubt creeping into their eyes, the tiny seeds of suspicion that my words had planted. You're paranoid, Jeff said finally, but his voice lacked conviction. Maybe. Or maybe I'm the only one who was paying attention. I finished my beer and stood up. You want to know what's really adult? Refusing to be a doormat. Refusing to pretend that betrayal is just a mistake that can be fixed with a few therapy sessions and some good intentions. Sit down, Mercer, Tom said, and we're not done talking. Yeah, we are. I pulled out my wallet and threw a 20 on the table. Because I just realized something. You're not my friends. You're Claire's friends who tolerated me as long as I played along with the happy husband routine. But now that I'm not playing anymore, you don't know what to do with me. That's not true, Dave protested, isn't it? Tell me, Dave, when Claire called Sandra crying about how mean I was being, did Sandra call you to get my side of the story? Or did she just tell you what a bastard I was and ask you to talk sense into me? Dave's silence was answer enough. That's what I thought. I looked around the table one more time. You know what the funny thing is? I actually thought you guys would have my back. I thought finding out my wife was cheating might earn me a little sympathy from my friends. Instead, I find out I never had any friends at all. I walked out of Flanagan's and into the parking lot, my hands shaking with adrenaline and rage. Behind me, I could hear Tom calling my name, but I didn't turn around. In my truck, I sat for a moment in the darkness, processing what had just happened. 15 years of friendship gone. Just like that, because I'd refused to be the victim they wanted me to be. My phone buzzed with a text from Claire. Tom called. He said you stormed out of Flanagan's. Can we please talk when you get home? We need to figure this out. I stared at the message for a long time before typing back, there's nothing to figure out. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. But even as I sent the message, I wasn't sure what my choice was going to be. All I knew was that the man who'd walked into Flanagan's tonight wasn't the same man driving home. Something had shifted, something fundamental and irreversible. The old Mercer would have apologized, would have tried to make peace, would have swallowed his pride to keep everyone comfortable. The old Mercer was gone. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I drove to my shop and slept on the couch in my office, surrounded by broken computers and the smell of electronics. It seemed fitting somehow. Everything in my life was broken. So why not sleep among the other damaged things? Claire called 6 times before I finally answered. Where are you? Her voice was tight with worry and anger. Somewhere that doesn't smell like lies, I said. Mercer, please come home. We need to talk about this like adults. Adults? Funny how everyone keeps using that word. As if being an adult means accepting betrayal with a smile. I told you. I ended it with James. It's over. We can move past this. When? When what? When did you end it with James? Yesterday? This morning? 5 minutes ago? Silence. That's what I thought, I said. You haven't ended anything. You're just buying time, hoping I'll calm down and go back to being the oblivious husband. That's not true. Prove it. How? Call him. Right now. End it while I'm listening. More silence. I can't do that, Mercer. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. Unless you don't want to end it. I do want to end it. But I need to do it properly, in person. I owe him that much. I laughed. a bitter sound that echoed in my empty shop. You owe him that much. What about what you owe me? I owe you everything. I know that. But please, just give me time to handle this right. Time, I repeated. You've had 4 months of time, Claire. Time to think about what you were doing. Time to consider how it would affect our marriage. Time to stop before it went too far. How much more time do you need? I'm scared, she whispered, and for a moment, she sounded like the woman I'd married. I'm scared of losing you. I'm scared of losing everything. You should have been scared 4 months ago. I hung up and turned off my phone. The next morning, I opened my shop and tried to focus on work. A steady stream of broken electronics provided a welcome distraction from my broken life. Around noon, my daughter Liv called. Dad? Mom told me what's happening. I'm coming home. Liv was 22, a senior at Northwestern studying marketing, like her mother. She'd inherited Claire's ambition and intelligence, along with my stubborn streak. The combination made her formidable. You don't need to come home, sweetheart. This is between your mother and me. Like hell it is. You're my parents. This affects me too. She drove down that afternoon and found me at the shop, hunched over a laptop that had been fried by a power surge. You look terrible, she said by way of greeting. Thanks. You look good too. Liv had always been direct, even as a child. She got that from me, though she wielded it with more precision than I ever had. Mom's a mess, she said, settling into the chair across from my workbench. She's been crying for 2 days straight. I'm sure she has. Don't you care? I looked up from the laptop. Of course I care. I've cared for 15 years. I cared when she worked late every Tuesday and Thursday. I cared when she stopped touching me. I cared when she started dressing up for work, but not for me. I cared so much that I ignored all the signs because I didn't want to believe what they meant. So you're giving up? I'm accepting reality. Liv leaned forward. Dad, people make mistakes, even big ones. That doesn't mean marriage is over. This wasn't a mistake, Liv. Forgetting to pick up milk is a mistake. Sleeping with another man for 4 months while lying to your husband is a choice. A series of choices. But she's sorry. Is she? Or is she sorry she got caught? Liv was quiet for a moment, processing. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. But I'm not going to pretend this didn't happen. I'm not going to smile and nod and go to marriage counseling and pretend that everything's fine, just because it's easier for everyone else. Everyone else? I told her about the confrontation at Flanagan's, about how our friends had chosen Claire's side, about how I'd become the villain in my own story. That's screwed up, Liv said, and I didn't correct her language. Yeah, it is. So what's the plan? The plan? Come on, Dad, I know you. You don't just accept things, you fix them. So, how are you going to fix this? I looked at my daughter, this young woman who'd inherited the best and worst of both her parents, and realized she was right. I wasn't the type to just accept betrayal and move on. I was the type to do something about it. I'm not sure yet, I said. But when I figure it out, you'll be the first to know. That evening, I finally went home. Claire was waiting in the kitchen, still wearing the clothes from the day before. She looked like she hadn't slept. I ended it, she said as soon as I walked in. I called James and told him it was over. Congratulations. You want a medal? I want my husband back. Which husband? The one who trusted you? The one who believed you when you said you were working late? The one who thought his wife loved him? I shook my head. That husband's gone, Claire. You killed him. So, who are you now? I looked at her. This woman I'd loved for so long. This stranger who'd been living in my house and sharing my bed while sleeping with another man, and felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. I'm the husband who knows the truth, I said, and I'm done being the victim in this story. The look in her eyes told me she understood. The old Mercer was gone, and whoever was taking his place wasn't going to be as forgiving. What does that mean? It means you're about to find out what happens when you push a good man too far. I walked upstairs to our bedroom and started packing a bag. Behind me, I could hear Claire crying, but the sound didn't move me the way it once would have. The man who would have comforted her, who would have put aside his own pain to make her feel better, was gone. In his place was someone harder, someone angrier, someone who'd learned that being good and trusting and forgiving just made you a target, someone who was done being anyone's fool. I spent the next week at a motel on Route 34 planning. Not planning a reconciliation or a divorce, planning something else entirely. Something that would make Claire understand exactly what she'd thrown away and what it felt like to lose everything. The first step was research. I'd always been good with computers, and it turned out those skills were useful for more than just fixing hardware. James Ashford had a surprisingly large digital footprint for someone who was supposed to be discreet about his affairs. His social media profiles painted the picture of a successful entrepreneur, but a deeper dive revealed some interesting inconsistencies. His startup was hemorrhaging money. His Tesla was leased, not owned. His expensive condo was mortgaged to the hilt. James Ashford was living a lifestyle he couldn't afford, funded by credit cards and questionable business practices. More interesting was his dating history. Claire wasn't his first affair with a married woman. In fact, it seemed to be a pattern. 3 different women over the past 2 years, all married, all in positions of professional authority, all eventually discarded when the relationships became too complicated. But the real gold mine was his ex-girlfriend, Tanya Morrison. She'd been posting cryptic messages on social media about lying cheaters and men who think they're untouchable. A little investigation revealed that James had been cheating on her with Claire, among others. I reached out to Tanya through a fake social media account, posing as someone else who'd been wronged by James. It didn't take long to establish a connection. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, and Tanya Morrison was scorned in every possible way. He's a predator, she told me during our first phone conversation. He targets married women because he thinks they won't make trouble. He gets off on the power dynamic. What do you mean? He records them. Audio, video, photos. Says it's for his own enjoyment, but I think he uses it to keep them quiet if they try to leave. My blood ran cold. He records them? Oh, yeah. He's got a whole collection. He showed me some of it when we were together. Thought it would turn me on, sick bastard. Do you know if he recorded Claire? Honey, he records everyone. It's like a compulsion with him. That night, I sat in my motel room, staring at the ceiling, processing what I'd learned. James Ashford wasn't just a homewrecker. He was a predator who collected trophies of his conquests. And my wife was one of those trophies. The next morning, I called Claire. Mercer, thank God. I've been trying to reach you for days. We need to talk. Meet me at Brennan Park in an hour. Okay, yes, I'll be there. Brennan Park was where we'd had our first date 15 years ago. It seemed appropriate somehow, meeting there to discuss.